Thanks for listening to the ArtTactic Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Green. Today, we're diving into the editions market, a segment that often flies under the radar compared to unique artworks like paintings or drawings. Yet for many collectors, prints offer an accessible entry point into art collecting, allowing them to acquire works by established artists at a more attainable price, which honestly can be a confidence builder as they begin their collecting journey. So in this week's episode, we're excited to explore some key trends in the prints market with Jack Bullen, co-founder and director of the Woolwich Contemporary Print Fair, taking place this year from November 21st to the 24th. We hope you enjoy the conversation, and as always, thanks so much for listening. Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Adam. Thank you very much for having me. Really excited to talk with you.
Absolutely. So I think a great place to start would be for our listeners who may not be familiar. Can you give us a little bit of background on the Woolwich Contemporary Print Fair and what can we look forward to in this year's edition?
Yes, of course. So my wife, Lizzie Glendinning, and I founded the fair back in 2016 for two reasons, really. One was to try and highlight the contemporary art market that we thought was a really thriving, exciting section of the art world that hadn't really been given enough exposure. So we did that. And then the other thing we wanted to do is try and challenge the model of art fairs to try and give opportunities for independent artists. So we kind of took those two things and founded the fair, as I say, back in 2016. What's unique about our fair is, other than being totally dedicated to contemporary print, is we run a 50-50 split model. So 50% of the fair is set aside for galleries, as any other fair does. And then the other 50% of the fair is dedicated to independent artists that apply through our international open call. And so what we do is, as a fair is sort of become like a mega gallery, as it were, for the duration of the fair. So 50% of the booths, we curate all the artwork on display. So we call it the curated hang. And so artists will apply typically kind of May, June time. And then there's a selection process. We bring in a number of independent selectors to help us make the decision. And I think this year we chose roughly about 500 works. And so we then take those on, we support the artists, we hang the work, curate the works, and then we sell as we would, as a gallery would. And so what's nice about the fair is that we mix these up completely. So it's not like you have a section that's for independent artists and a section that's for galleries. We kind of interdisperse those. So one booth will be a gallery, and then you go through its curated hang, and then opposite it's another gallery, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of really kind of trying to, look at the entire range of the print world all together in one place. So we have, as I say, independent artists, but we have galleries. We had Bonhams took a stand last year. We have, people running workshops and demonstrations. So we actually bring printing presses into the fair. So things are being made there. So we're really trying to kind of represent the whole of the art world in this kind of microcosm. And so this year, we've been going for, this will be our 9th edition. And so we're kind of really, it's looking at expanding what we've done well in the past. But excitingly, we have got a few new things this year. We've got a dedicated talks program, which we're really excited about. We've got speakers like Fatos Ustek, Hetty Judah, Menli Gurlis, as well as ArtTactic's own Anders Peterson. And so that's really exciting. So there's a range of topics that we'll be discussing. Obviously, things like what is a print, which I know you want to discuss within this podcast, but also looking at class and creative access and so on as well. So there's a really exciting range of topics. And then I suppose really, it's just looking at the artists we've got on display. We're really excited about the quality of the work this year. The galleries are bringing some really exciting big name artists, such as Sir Michael Craig Martin, Yinka Shonobare, Cornelia Parker, etc. And then there's some really exciting undiscovered or emerging talent within the curated hang that I'm really excited to show. Primarily, we've got an amazing piece by Sergio Suarez from America, who is showing an 8-meter by 3-meter print, which would be really exciting. So, lots to see and do.
It sounds like it's going to be a great addition. So I wanted to ask your perspective, since you're highly involved in the print market. In your experience, what draws collectors to prints over unique works, like paintings, for example? Is it primarily about the price point and accessibility, or are there other factors at play?
Yeah, I think accessibility has a big part to play in why print is proving so popular at the moment. But I don't think it's entirely that. I think, what is one of the exciting things, or the thing I enjoy most about print, is just the range within the media. So, we've just spoken about etchings, screen prints, digital. It's really exciting, and I think, print has always been the kind of technological forefront of the art world throughout the years. And it's really then when it kind of got to, say, the 90s, where technology kind of started to outstrip the medium. And so artists, they were playing with you in this balance between technology and then craft. And I think there's a really exciting moment at the moment where it's kind of this push and pull between that. Artists are looking at combining new technologies with traditional techniques. And I think that's exciting in itself. I think it's a very process-led medium, which I think as a collector, it really stands out when you're going to shows, and you can really kind of see that. People also like to understand a bit about the process. So, what we do at the fair is we have these presses that we bring in, and we run demonstrations and workshops. And so people can actually see how they're made. And that is also kind of drives the interest, because people want to talk about the artwork on their walls. It's about them and its reflection, and it helps people tell that story. So people are saying, yeah, have you noticed this? And this is what happens within, and this is what the artist was doing. And I think that's a big part to play in it. I think also it's print also does do well digitally. And I think as we've expanded into a digital market, you can see, it just comes up well in a digital form, which, sculptures and paintings might not as well.
I know you touched on it briefly about technology, but what would you say are some exciting trends you're seeing in the print market today, whether we're talking about the market itself or even ways that artists are pushing the medium to make innovative additions?
Yes, I would say there are three that really stand out for me at the moment. I think we've certainly seen a growth in ambition or scale of work from what has been applied. So, as I mentioned earlier, Sergio Suarez has printed a piece that is 3 meters, I think, just under 3 meters high by 8 meters wide. And I think that's drawn from both technological advancements, allowing this sort of thing, but also just kind of asking why is print? Because the idea is that a print is a small piece of paper, that was made out of a small printing press, historically. And I think artists are challenging that now. So we're seeing a lot of artists producing sculptural pieces as well. We have actually the Centre for Print Research from Bristol coming up to the fair again this year, who have a whole range of artists that are really like pushing the boundaries using technology in interesting ways. And we've seen over the past certainly 2 years a real boom in sculptural pieces applied to the fair. So there's some really interesting artists, two in particular that spring to mind. Zach Eastwood Bloom, who does these beautiful takes on like 3D printed sculptures that are playing with classical themes and manipulating those. And actually, James Rogers, who's also playing with classical themes, but he kind of looks at old sculptures, and then he actually uses he records himself moving and uses he uses digitally kind of manipulates his movement and then creates these figures using kind of a mix of 3D printing and traditional cast techniques, which is really exciting. And then I say the final thing that we've also noticed is kind of artists showcasing their work unglazed. So, again, we've always shown works are 90% of the work shown are behind glass. And I think that also sometimes can create just a physical barrier to the work. People think of print as being a very flat, untextured artwork. And it's not at all. It's, you just got to get up close to see the kind of layers of the screen prints over each other, or the textures within carborundum prints or intaglio works. And I think, I first saw this really with an artist, Jake Garfield, who would show his works just mounted, framed, but just mounted onto a board, and it kind of just really pings out. And so we've seen that, and I think that is also a trend that I think is growing more and more.
In recent years, we saw a trend of printmakers releasing affordable drops, right, where a new edition is announced and then goes on sale on their website at a specified day and time. And I think this approach created a lot of buzz, in large part because the price was often below the auction market value, and so it often led to editions selling out instantly, and in certain cases even spurred some flipping at auction, which added a level of speculation around these works. Lately, though, it seems like starting release prices have increased, and as a result, these types of drops aren't selling out as regularly, or there isn't as much buzz surrounding them. Have you noticed this shift as well, and what do you think generally of this tactic of using drops to sell prints?
Well, I think the predominant trend with prints is that the market is growing and just continuing to grow. I can't see that changing in the near or even distant future, really. But in terms of the drops, I think it's been a really interesting. It's been really interesting to witness how people are playing with how they release editions, and I think that is interesting because they are multiple. You can play around with different ways to sell. David Shrigley, for instance, when he releases his works, he kind of prices in growth within his edition. So some priced at say I think even say £500 for the first 20, 30 pieces, and then that goes up. So edition 30 to 50 is then that price is doubled. So it drives the demand. I think you can be more playful in how you do it. So I think we have seen artists dropping works that are much cheaper than you would expect to create that demand. It's tailed off a little bit recently, I think, but I think there's a few reasons why that could be. I'm not entirely sure myself, but I think as the interest in print has grown, there's less need to create that lower price because the demand's already there. So there's no need for an artist or a gallery to kind of undercut themselves. I also think, from what I've heard when I've been dealing with artists who've been doing this for a while, the algorithm seems to have changed on within Instagram especially, and so they're not getting the kind of clicks themselves. So they're maybe pricing it higher because they weren't getting it as much. Could be that way. I know I've slightly kind of gone against what I said before, but I think there are just multiple reasons why that might be, and I'm not 100% sure. But I think its peak obviously was really during COVID as well, when people weren't going out, and the artist support pledge was really interesting. And I think, with all these things, they kind of peak and trough or come around in circles. So I just think we're maybe just seeing people looking to change how they do it. And I think it'll be interesting to see what people come up with next.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when we think about buying and selling art, we tend to picture the traditional approach of visiting the gallery to purchase a work. Innovation in the art transaction itself isn't usually the first thing that comes to mind. So I find it fascinating that some artists and printmakers are willing to take risks and explore new, potentially more effective ways of selling art.
Yeah, and there's cross-pollination between other industries. I know the idea of the drops, I think, came from fashion with what was it? Nike doing the Air Jordans. I think that's where it originated from. And it's been picked up. So there'll be things that other industries are playing with, whether that, I don't know, is in the within fashion, or whether it's in something completely seemingly unrelated. But people will innovate, and I think because it is in editions, you can be more creative than if you're just selling an original painting or something like that.
So for new collectors who may be listening to the podcast and are interested in starting collecting prints, what are some important due diligence tips you can share to help them make confident, informed purchases and really steer clear of potential pitfalls along the way?
I think the key is to work out whether you're buying an original work or a reproduction work, and it's it can be very, very confusing, and there can be blurred lines within it. As I say, an original work is intentionally made as a print. It's not. There isn't an original. Every single work is original. It's not. There's not an original artwork that has been copied and turned into a run. And it's also the language that's used. So that's why you want to look out for original print. It can get confusing when you see limited edition print, because a limited edition print will look just like an original print in terms of it's signed by the artist. There's a numbering system that, say 1 over 100 or 10 over 100. And it can be exactly the same. So trying to find out that it is key. And there are a few things that you can look at or tips I can give. I think obviously you want to look for the edition size. That's the first thing you're looking for, whether to kind of really make sure that it's an original work. And then you also want to look at the size, because I think on the whole, limited editions tend to be in the kind of hundreds, or even, don't think thousands, but yeah, effectively hundreds. And so, being lower is safer in that sense. So if somebody is going to be making an original print, it does actually take quite a lot of effort to make each edition. So, if you're looking around the kind of 30 or kind of 40 mark, you should be more confident that that's an original print. Anything, so 1 over 40 is what you're looking for, or lower. Obviously, that will mean that probably the piece is more expensive, but that's a kind of good indication that you know where you are. I think also looking in at the texture. So if a work looks original prints are very much more textural than you might think. If you look up close, you can see the embossing where the plate or the matrix has been pressed through the press and has created that indentation within it, so you can see the outline of that. And so look at things like that, and that will kind of help you feel more confident when you're doing it. I think the other thing is obviously just to speak with the gallery, ask questions, and go to trusted dealers and fairs. There are a number of fairs, not just us, that deal in original print. There's some fantastic galleries. We've got 20 odd galleries taking part at the fair this year, from Jealous to Paul Stolper Gallery to Rabley, all showing fantastic works, and so just go up and have a look in there. And I think the more you look up close, you'll open up a world of amazing work. And then finally, I would say that in the end, it is really all about enjoyment, isn't it? When you're doing, I always worry we all talk about art as an investment, and it's a bit like, say, the Grand National. I always say to people, I can tell you go to somebody and you're betting on a horse at the Grand National, and somebody could tell you it's the best horse in the entire world. Doesn't mean it, and it could be, but it doesn't mean it's not going to fall at the first hurdle. So you should always buy art for enjoyment's sake first and foremost, because you like having it on your wall. It speaks to you, and then if it is investable and gains some price, that should be in my opinion, should be a bonus.
Jack, thanks so much again for joining us on the podcast and sharing your insights into the print market, as well as previewing the upcoming edition of the Woolwich Contemporary Print Fair. If our listeners want to learn more about the fair or potentially attend, what's the best website they can visit?
So you can follow us on Instagram or go to the website woolwichprintfair.com, or ideally come and visit us in a few weeks' time. So it's the 21st to the 24th of November down in the Royal Arsenal in Woolwich.
Great. Thanks so much again, Jack. Appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me.